Captain Jake Morrison stared out the window of his ship as the massive space station grew larger. Nexus Prime was the biggest thing humans had ever built, but it looked tiny next to the alien structures around it. Ships the size of cities floated nearby, their hulls covered in patterns that hurt to look at. Some ships didn't even look like ships at all. One looked like a giant flower made of metal and light. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. The message from the Federation Council had been short and strange. Come to Nexus Prime immediately, bring your best crew. Prepare for something that will change everything. Dr. Lisa Park walked onto the bridge carrying a cup of coffee and a tablet full of reports. She was the smartest person Jake knew, but she always looked worried these days. Being the only human, expert on alien cultures was a big job. Any word on what this meeting is about? She asked, sitting down in the chair next to him. Nothing yet, Jake said. Ryan thinks it's about the mining rights in the outer systems. Kate thinks someone finally complained about our engine modifications. Commander Ryan Blake entered the bridge right on time as always. Everything about Ryan was precise and military. His uniform was perfect, his hair was cut exactly right, and he never smiled unless he meant it. He had been Jake's first officer for 3 years, and Jake still couldn't figure out what made him laugh. We're cleared for docking, Captain, Ryan said. Bay 47, level 15, they're sending an escort. The escort turned out to be 3 aliens Jake had never seen before. They were tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to glow slightly. They didn't talk much, just led the human crew through corridors that were too big and too bright. Other aliens stopped to stare at them as they passed. Some pointed. A few made sounds that might have been laughter. The council chamber was enormous. Jake counted at least 50 different species sitting in curved rows that rose up toward the ceiling. At the front of the room, 5 elder counselors sat behind a table that looked like it was carved from a single piece of black stone. Elder Counselor Vexithani stood up to speak. She was one of the Saurian people, tall and covered in dark green scales. Her voice was deep and carried well in the huge room. Captain Morrison of the human vessel Wanderer, she said, you have been called here to learn about an opportunity that comes to very few species. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Opportunities from the Federation usually meant dangerous jobs that nobody else wanted to do. We wish to tell you about the Crucible Protocol, Vexithani continued. It is an ancient test, created by the architects long before any of us reached the stars. The test determines which species are ready for true galactic citizenship. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a planet covered in strange geometric patterns. The surface seemed to shift and move like it was alive. This is Kethamoran, another elder said. This one was a Zephyrian, made of what looked like living energy contained in a roughly human shape. The test takes place here. It has 3 phases, each more difficult than the last. Lisa leaned forward in her seat. How many species have taken this test? 207, Vexithani said. Over the past 1,000 years. And how many have passed? Jake asked, though he was starting to suspect he knew the answer. None. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Jake looked around the room and saw the same expression on every alien face. Sadness. Shame. Fear. My own people attempted the test 300 years ago. Vexithani continued. We brought our finest warriors, our greatest minds, our most advanced weapons. We failed before completing the first phase. The Zephyrians, masters of energy itself, lasted only slightly longer. The Corvin Empire sent their entire battle fleet. They never even began the test properly. What happens if you fail? Ryan asked. Different things, the Zephyrian elder said. Some species are simply sent home with restrictions on their technology and territory. Others are placed under protective status, like children who need supervision. A few have been banished from certain sectors. Entirely. Jake tried to process this information. Every species in the Federation had failed this test, every single one. And now they wanted humans to try. Why us, he asked. We've only been part of the Federation for 50 years. We're still figuring out how to work our own ships half the time. A few aliens in the chamber made sounds that might have been agreement. The Saurian elder's expression didn't change. "That is exactly why we chose you," she said. "Your species is different. You approach problems in ways we do not expect. Perhaps this difference will help where our strengths have failed." Lisa stood up. "Can we see the records from previous attempts? Study what went wrong." "Of course," Vexthani said. "But I must warn you. Every species that has attempted the Crucible believed they were prepared. The Ethereals spent 50 years analyzing the test before they tried it. They failed worse than most." Kate Sullivan, their engineer, had been quiet until now. She was young for her position, but she could fix anything and had a way of thinking that made Jake's head hurt sometimes. "What do we get if we pass?" she asked. "Access to architect technology," the Zephyrian elder said. "Knowledge that could advance your species by thousands of years, full galactic citizenship with all the rights and responsibilities that brings. And, if we fail, you will join the rest of us," Vexthani said quietly. "As junior members of a galaxy we cannot fully understand." Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was already taking notes, her mind probably racing through possibilities. Ryan stood at attention, ready for whatever orders came next. Kate was staring at the hologram of Keth Moran with the expression she got when she saw a particularly interesting piece of broken equipment. "How long do we have to decide?" Jake asked. "As long as you need," Vexthani said. "But Captain Morrison, I must tell you something as someone who has walked this path before. Do not let hope blind you to reality. This test has broken species, far greater than yours. It has humbled empires and destroyed the dreams of entire civilizations." She stepped closer, and Jake could see something like kindness in her reptilian eyes. "Your people show promise," she said, "but promise means nothing in the face of the Crucible. It will test everything you believe about yourselves, and it will find you wanting, as it has found all of us wanting." The meeting ended with formal pleasantries and promises to send more information. But as the human crew walked back to their ship, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they had just been offered a chance to prove they were special, or a chance to learn they were not. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, staring at the data files the Federation had sent them. 3 days had passed since the meeting at Nexus Prime, and the information about the Crucible Protocol kept getting stranger. Dr. Alex Chen walked onto the bridge carrying 2 cups of coffee. Alex was the ship's psychologist, a quiet man who had joined the crew because he wanted to understand how humans behaved in space. He handed 1 cup to Jake and sat down. "I've been reading the failure reports," Alex said. "Every single species made the same mistake." "What mistake?" Jake asked. "They all brought their best people and their best equipment. The Zephyrians brought energy weapons that could destroy planets. The Corvins brought their most elite soldiers. The Ethereals brought their most powerful psychics." Lisa Park entered the bridge with her arms full of tablets and datapads. She had been studying the test records for 3 days straight, barely stopping to eat or sleep. "Alex is right," she said, dropping into her chair. "Look at this pattern. Every species approached the test like it was a war they had to win. They brought everything they thought made them superior." Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez, their communications officer, looked up from his station. Sam was good at languages and had been trying to translate some of the older records. He was young and enthusiastic, the kind of person who got excited about alien grammar. "I've been reading the architect texts," Sam said. "The original language is really strange. The word they use for test can also mean game or lesson depending on how you read it." Jake frowned. "A game? Or a lesson?" Sam repeated. "The architects might not have been testing for strength or intelligence. They might have been teaching something." Ryan Blake entered the bridge with his usual precise timing. He had been reviewing the tactical aspects of previous attempts, trying to understand where the military strategies had gone wrong. "Captain," Ryan said, "I've analyzed the approach patterns of every species that attempted the test. They all made the same tactical error." "Which was?" "They treated it like an enemy to be defeated instead of a problem to be solved." Kate Sullivan's voice came over the comm system from the engine room. "Hey, can someone come down here? I think I found something weird in these technical specifications." Jake and Lisa made their way to the engine room, where Kate was surrounded by holographic displays showing the structure of Keth Moran. The planet-sized construct rotated slowly in the air, covered in patterns that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. "Look at this," Kate said, pointing to a section of the display. Every species tried to bring their biggest ships and most advanced technology, but look at the docking facilities on Kethmaran. Jake looked where she was pointing. The docking bays were small, designed for ships no larger than exploration vessels. "The architects built this place to accommodate small ships," Kate continued. "But everyone who took the test brought battle fleets and massive research vessels. They had to leave most of their equipment in orbit. So they were already at a disadvantage before they started," Lisa said. "Maybe," Kate said. "Or maybe they were supposed to come small." Technician Ben Carter looked up from his workstation. Ben was quiet most of the time, but he had a talent for seeing patterns that others missed. He had been analyzing the energy, readings from Kethmaran. "There's something else," Ben said. "The power signatures from the test facility don't match weapons or defensive systems. They look more like entertainment systems." "Entertainment?" Jake asked. "Yeah, like a theme park or a game arcade. Whatever the architects built there, it wasn't designed to fight people." Dr. Chen leaned against the wall, thinking. "What if the test isn't about proving you're the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy? What if it's about proving you're ready to learn?" Lisa nodded slowly. "That would make sense. The architects were supposed to be incredibly advanced. Maybe they weren't looking for species that could match them in power. Maybe they were looking for species that could grow." Jake walked over to the main display and stared at the rotating image of Kethmaran. "So every species that failed the test failed because they were trying to impress the architects instead of learning from them." "It's possible," Alex said. "From a psychological standpoint, it makes sense. Pride and arrogance are the enemies of learning. If you think you already know everything, you can't be taught anything new," Sam called from the bridge. "Captain, we're getting another transmission from the Federation Council. They want to know our decision." Jake looked around at his crew. They weren't the best humanity had to offer in terms of raw talent or advanced equipment. The Wanderer was a good ship, but it wasn't the newest or most powerful in the human fleet. His crew was competent, but they weren't the elite specialists that other species had sent. Maybe that was exactly what they needed. "What do you all think?" Jake asked. "Should we try this test?" Kate grinned. "I'm curious to see what kind of technology the architects left behind. And honestly, this sounds more interesting than another mineral survey mission." "I'd like to understand what we're really dealing with," Lisa said. "If the test is really about learning and growth, then maybe we have a chance." Ryan straightened up. "I think we should try, Captain. But not the way the other species did. We should approach this as explorers, not conquerors." Alex nodded. "I agree. We should go as ourselves, not as representatives of human superiority." Ben looked up from his console. "The worst thing that happens is we fail and join the club of every other species in the galaxy. The best thing is we learn something that could help everyone." Sam's voice came from the bridge again. "Captain, the council is still waiting for an answer." Jake made his decision. "Tell them we accept, but we have conditions." He walked back to the bridge with his crew following. Sam opened a communication channel to Nexus Prime. "This is Captain Morrison," Jake said. "We'll take the test, but we're going to do it our way." Elder Counselor Vexthani's image appeared on the screen. "What do you mean, your way?" "We're taking one ship, the Wanderer. We're taking our regular crew, not specialists or elite soldiers. We're going to approach this test like explorers, not like warriors." The alien looked confused. "Captain, every species has brought their finest resources to this test. Surely you want to give your people the best possible chance?" Jake smiled. "Maybe the best possible chance isn't about bringing the biggest guns or the smartest people. Maybe it's about bringing the right attitude." "This is highly irregular," Vexthani said. "Yeah," Jake said. "That's kind of the point." After the communication ended, Lisa looked at Jake with concern. "Are you sure about this? We're betting everything on a theory." "We're betting everything on being human," Jake said. "If that's not good enough, then maybe we don't deserve to pass the test anyway." Kate laughed. "Well, this should be interesting. When do we leave?" As soon as we're ready, Jake said. Time to see if being ordinary is actually extraordinary. The Wanderer approached Kethmoran slowly, and Jake Morrison felt his breath catch in his throat. The artificial planet was unlike anything he had ever seen. The surface was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to move and shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Structures rose from the ground like impossible buildings, twisting into shapes that made his eyes water. Well, that's not normal, Chief Medical Officer Dan Phillips said from behind him. Dan had joined them on the bridge to watch their approach. He was a good doctor and had a dry sense of humor that helped keep everyone calm during stressful situations. Define normal, Kate Sullivan said over the comm from her engineering station. Because nothing about this place fits any physics I know. Pilot Amy Foster was at the controls bringing them in for landing. Amy had a reputation for unorthodox flying methods, but she could land a ship anywhere. She whistled softly as she looked at the landing coordinates they had been given. The docking bay is right in the middle of that pattern maze thing, she said. This should be fun. Lisa Park was studying her sensors, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. The energy readings are all over the place. It's like the whole planet is alive. Maybe it is, Alex Chen said quietly. The architects were supposed to be masters of technology we can't understand. Maybe they built something that thinks. The landing went smoothly, which surprised everyone. Amy had expected problems, but the docking bay seemed to adjust itself to fit the Wanderer perfectly. The moment they touched down, a message appeared on their screens in perfect English. Welcome to Kethmoran. Please proceed to the entrance. When ready. The first phase will begin when you are prepared. Jake looked around at his crew. Well, I guess we're doing this. Everyone ready? They gathered their basic equipment and left the ship. The docking bay was enormous, with walls that seemed to be made of some kind of living metal. As they walked toward the only visible exit, their footsteps echoed strangely. The entrance led to a corridor that opened into a vast chamber. Jake stopped and stared. In front of them was the most complex maze he had ever seen. It stretched up and down, and in directions that shouldn't exist. Walls appeared and disappeared, paths twisted back on themselves. Some sections seemed to be made of solid light, others of shadow that moved like water. Oh, come on, Dan Phillips said, shaking his head. A maze? Really? What are we, lab rats? Amy Foster laughed. It's like that corn maze back home in Kansas, except someone's been messing with the laws of physics. A hologram appeared in front of them. It showed previous species attempting the maze. The Zephyrians had tried to burn through the walls with energy weapons. The Corvins had attempted to map every possible path using advanced computers. The Ethereals had used their psychic powers to try to sense the correct route. All of them had failed. The maze had driven them back, confused them, or simply worn them down until they gave up. So what makes us different? Ryan Blake asked, studying the hologram recordings. Maybe we're not supposed to be different, Kate said. Maybe we're supposed to be ourselves. Jake stepped toward the maze entrance. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the walls around them shifted. New paths opened while others closed. The whole structure seemed to pulse with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Well, that's not intimidating at all, Ben Carter said. Lisa was taking readings with her instruments. The maze is responding to our presence. It's almost like it's studying us. Then let's give it something to study, Jake said. Come on, let's see where this thing goes. They entered the maze as a group. Within minutes, they were separated as paths split and walls shifted around them. Jake found himself alone in a corridor that seemed to stretch on forever. He tried to retrace his steps, but the path behind him had changed. He called out to his crew, but his voice seemed to be absorbed by the walls. Instead of panicking, Jake sat down on the floor and laughed. Okay, Maze, he said out loud. You got me. Now what? The walls around him shimmered, and he heard Amy's voice singing somewhere nearby. She was singing an old Earth song, something about country roads and going home. Her voice was cheerful and completely unworried. Jake stood up and followed the sound. As he walked, he started humming along. The maze walls became more solid, less shifty. The path ahead became clearer. He found Amy in a circular chamber, still singing. She grinned when she saw him. Hey, Captain. Nice place, huh? Very retro alien. Chic. How are you so calm? Jake asked. Why should I be worried? It's just a maze. I got lost in bigger ones at the county fair. She gestured around them. Besides, look at this architecture. Someone put a lot of work into this. Might as well appreciate it. One by one, they found the rest of the crew. Dan Phillips was telling jokes to himself and seemed to be having a good time. Kate was examining the wall structure with professional interest. Ben was sketching the patterns he saw, trying to understand how they worked. Lisa and Ryan were together, discussing the psychological aspects of maze design. I think we're missing the point, Lisa said when they all gathered in the central chamber. Every other species tried to conquer this maze or outsmart it. But what if we're supposed to experience it? Experience it how? Ryan asked. Like a game, Alex said. Remember what Sam found in the translations? The architect word for test can also mean game. Dan laughed. So we're supposed to have fun? That's the secret? Amy nodded. Makes sense to me. When I was a kid, the best part of a corn maze wasn't finding the exit. It was exploring all the dead ends and weird corners. Jake looked around at his crew. They were relaxed, curious, even enjoying themselves. None of them were treating the maze like an enemy to be defeated. Let's try something, he said. Instead of trying to solve this maze, let's just explore it. See what it has to show us. They spent the next hour wandering through the maze together. They found chambers filled with impossible art, corridors that played music when they walked. Through them and rooms where gravity worked differently. They laughed at the weird physics, marveled at the beautiful designs, and helped each other when the paths got confusing. The maze responded to their attitude. The walls became stable. The paths became clear. The structure seemed to welcome them, instead of fighting them. Finally, they found themselves in a large room with a single exit on the far side. Above the exit, words appeared in glowing letters. Phase 1 complete. Well done. That's it? Kate asked. We're done? I think so, Lisa said, checking her instruments. The maze has stopped shifting. We can go through that door. As they walked toward the exit, Dan chuckled. You know what the funny thing is? I actually enjoyed that. When's the last time you can say that about a test? Jake smiled. The first phase of the Crucible Protocol was complete, and they had passed it by doing something no other species had thought to try. They had treated it like an adventure instead of a challenge. 2 more phases to go, Ryan said. Bring it on, Amy said cheerfully. If they're all this much fun, this is going to be the best mission ever. Jake hoped she was right, but as they stepped through the exit into whatever came next, he had a feeling the real test was just beginning. The door from the maze led to a long hallway made of smooth black stone. Jake Morrison and his crew walked carefully, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Emergency lighting strips along the walls cast strange shadows that seemed to move on their own. This feels different, Lisa Park said, checking her instruments. The energy readings are much stronger here. Dr. Carol Young, the ship's historian, had been quiet during the maze phase. She was older than the rest of the crew and had joined them specifically to document their experience with the Crucible Protocol. Now she looked worried. According to the records, this is where most species gave up, she said. The second phase broke them completely. They reached the end of the hallway and found themselves facing a massive circular door. Words appeared on its surface in glowing text. The mirror of truths awaits. Enter when you are ready to face what you truly are. Security Chief Tony Miller stepped forward. Tony was responsible for keeping the crew safe, and he took that job seriously. He was a big man with steady hands and a calm voice that could keep people focused during emergencies. Captain, he said, maybe we should send someone in first to scout the situation. Jake shook his head. We go in together. That's how we made it through the maze. The door opened as they approached, revealing a chamber that seemed to have no walls or ceiling. The floor was solid, but everything else faded into darkness. In the center of the room stood a circle of mirrors, each one tall as a person and perfectly reflective. Well, this looks ominous, Dan Phillips said. Let me guess. We look in the mirrors and see our deepest fears? Something like that, Carol said, consulting her notes. The Zephyrians saw their energy forms dissolving. The Corvins saw their empire crumbling. The Ethereals saw their psychic powers turning against them. Amy Foster walked up to one of the mirrors and peered at it. I just see myself, nothing scary about that. But as she kept looking, her reflection began to change. The mirror showed her as a child, crying in a crashed shuttle while rescue teams searched for survivors. It showed her failing her first pilot exam, then her second, then her third. It showed her father telling her she would never be good enough for space service. Amy's face went pale, but she didn't look away. Yeah, I remember that, she said to her reflection. Dad was wrong, though. I made it anyway. Jake stepped up to another mirror. His reflection showed him the day he had chosen to leave Earth and join the exploration service. But the mirror twisted the memory, showing his mother crying as he left. It showed him missing family gatherings, birthdays, and holidays. It showed him alone in space while his family grew older without him. That's not fair, Jake said to the mirror. I called. Every week I sent messages. I came home when I could. But the mirror kept showing him what he had missed. His father's funeral, which he had attended by video link because he was too far away to return in time. His sister's wedding, where he had been present only as a hologram. His nephew's first steps, which he had watched on a delayed recording. Jake felt tears on his cheeks, but he kept looking. I made sacrifices, he said. But I also made a difference. I helped map new systems. I made first contact with 3 species. I kept my crew safe. Around the chamber, the rest of the crew was facing their own mirrors. Lisa saw herself as a young scientist watching her research team die in an accident on Europa. The mirror showed her the moment she realized her calculations had been wrong, that her mistake had cost lives. I learned from that, she said to her reflection. I never made that mistake again. I saved more lives because of what I learned. Ryan saw himself as a junior officer, frozen with fear during his first combat situation. The mirror showed him the soldiers who had died because he hesitated, the mission that failed because he couldn't give the order to fire. I was young, he said quietly. I learned. I got better. I never let fear control me again. Alex saw himself failing as a therapist, unable to help a patient who had eventually taken their own life. Ben saw himself as a child, being bullied at school while he hid behind his computers. Dan saw himself losing his first patient, a young woman who had died while he tried desperately to save her. Carol saw herself as a graduate student, watching her professor take credit for her research. Tony saw himself as a young security officer, letting a criminal escape because he was too slow to react. Each mirror showed painful truths, moments of failure and loss and regret. But something strange happened as the crew continued to look at their reflections. They started talking to each other. I remember my first failure too, Lisa said to Ryan. It never really goes away, does it? No, Ryan said, but it teaches you what matters. Dan laughed, but it was a sad sound. At least, we're all disasters together. That's not true, Amy said. We're all human together, there's a difference. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all crying, but none of them were broken. They were sharing their pain instead of hiding from it. You know what? He said. These mirrors are showing us our worst moments, but they're not showing us the whole story. The mirrors began to flicker as if confused. Show us what happened next, Jake said to his reflection. Show us what we did after we failed. The mirror wavered, then began to show new images. Jake saw himself comforting other crew members who had lost family. He saw himself making sure his crew had time to call home. He saw himself learning to balance duty with compassion. Around the chamber, the other mirrors began to change too. They showed Lisa developing new safety protocols that had saved hundreds of lives. They showed Ryan becoming a leader who protected his people. They showed Dan learning to heal not just bodies, but hearts. We're not perfect, Jake said to the room. We've all made mistakes, we've all lost things, but we learned. We grew. We became better. The mirrors began to show not just individual moments, but connections. Times when the crew had supported each other, helped each other, laughed together, through difficult times. The reflections showed them not as isolated failures, but as a team that had overcome challenges together. "I think I understand now," Alex said. The other species saw their failures and were ashamed. They tried to hide from what they saw. "But we're not hiding," Lisa said. "We're talking about it. We're sharing it." The mirrors began to glow brighter, and new words appeared on the walls. Phase 2 complete. Wisdom comes not from avoiding failure, but from learning to carry it with grace. The chamber filled with warm light, and a new door opened on the far side. "Well," Dan said, wiping his eyes, "that was therapeutic. Do we get group therapy rates?" Everyone laughed, and the sound echoed in the chamber like music. "One more phase," Jake said. "Ready?" "Ready," they said together, and walked toward the final test. The final door opened into the largest chamber yet. Jake Morrison and his crew stepped inside and stopped in amazement. The room was enormous, with walls that curved up and disappeared into darkness. But what took their breath away was what sat. In the center, a star was dying. It hung in the middle of the chamber, contained by some kind of invisible force field. The star was smaller than their sun back home, but it was clearly in trouble. Its light flickered like a candle in the wind. Dark spots spread across its surface. The air in the chamber felt warm and heavy. "How is this possible?" Kate Sullivan whispered. "How do you put a star inside a room?" Lisa Park was already scanning with her instruments. "The energy readings are incredible. This thing is real. It's actually a star." Words appeared on the walls around them, glowing with the same light as the dying star. Final phase. The star system of Veltar contained 12 planets and billions of potential lives. Save the star and preserve the system, or let it die and accept the loss. Choose wisely. Jake looked around at his crew. They all wore the same expression of shock and confusion. "They want us to save a star?" Amy Foster asked. "How do you save a star?" Carol Young was checking her historical records. According to the files, this is where every species spent the most time. The Zephyrians tried to feed it energy for 3 days. The Corvins attempted to contain the collapse with force fields. The Ethereals tried to communicate with it using psychic powers. "And they all failed?" Ryan Blake asked. "Every single one," Carol confirmed. "Most of them made the star worse. Some of them caused it to go supernova in the test chamber." Dan Phillips walked closer to the star, studying it carefully. "Wait a minute. This doesn't look like stellar collapse. The patterns are all wrong." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Dan pointed to the dark spots spreading across the star's surface. "If this star was dying, we'd see different symptoms. This looks more like birth pains." Lisa joined him, comparing her readings to her knowledge of stellar physics. "Dan's right. The energy patterns are consistent with stellar formation, not collapse. But it's clearly in distress," Tony Miller said. "Look at how the light keeps flickering." Ben Carter had been quiet, watching the star with his usual careful attention to detail. "Actually, it's not flickering randomly. There's a pattern. It's almost like a heartbeat." Kate laughed suddenly. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. It's not dying, it's pregnant." Everyone stared at her. "Think about it," Kate continued. "All the symptoms, the energy patterns, the pulsing. This star isn't collapsing. It's about to split and create a new star system." Alex Chen nodded slowly. "That would make sense. Binary star formation is rare, but not unknown. And if this is artificial, the architects created a stellar nursery," Lisa finished. "They built a place where new star systems can be born safely." Jake felt a strange mix of relief and confusion. "So we don't need to save it, we need to let it happen." "But what about the test?" Ryan asked. "Every other species tried to intervene. They brought their most advanced technology to fix the problem." "Maybe that was the problem," Amy said. "Maybe they were trying to fix something that wasn't broken." Sam Rodriguez, who had been monitoring communications from the ship, spoke up over the comm system. "Captain, I'm getting energy readings from the star that match what happens right before binary fission. If this thing splits, it's going to be beautiful." "Jake," made a decision that felt both obvious and impossible. We do nothing. We watch. We bear witness. Captain? Tony asked. Are you sure? Billions of lives are at stake. No, Jake said. Billions of lives are about to be born. This isn't a death. It's a birth. The crew found places to sit around the chamber. They pulled out their instruments to record what was happening, but they didn't try to interfere. They just watched. The star's pulsing grew stronger. The dark spots on its surface began to move in spirals. The temperature in the chamber rose, but not dangerously. It felt warm and welcoming, like sitting by a fireplace. You know, Dan said, when I was a kid, I helped my aunt deliver a baby during a storm. The power was out, no medical equipment, just us and nature doing what it was supposed to do. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be there. My grandmother used to say that some problems solve themselves if you give them space, Amy added. She was talking about bread rising, but I guess it applies to stars too. Over the next several hours, they watched the star transform. The dark. Spots grew larger and began to separate from the main body. Energy flowed between them like umbilical cords made of light. The chamber filled with a sound like singing, beautiful and alien and somehow familiar. It's working, Lisa said, tears streaming down her face. Look at the readings. 2 stable cores are forming. The separation happened slowly, then all at once. The original star split into 2 smaller stars, each burning bright and healthy. They began to orbit each other in a dance that would last billions of years. The chamber filled with brilliant light and new words appeared on the walls. Final phase complete. Wisdom is knowing when not to act. Intelligence without restraint is destruction. Power without humility is meaningless. You have shown the greatest strength of all, the strength to do nothing when doing nothing is right. A new voice filled the chamber, deeper and more complex than any they had heard before. It spoke in perfect English, but with harmonics that suggested vast intelligence. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am the final architect, preserved in the memory of Keth Morin to speak with those who passed the Crucible Protocol. Jake stood up. We passed? You did more than pass. You understood. Every other species approached our test with the assumption that action was required. They brought weapons to fight, technology to control, power to dominate. They could not conceive that sometimes the greatest wisdom is restraint. So the test was about knowing when not to interfere? Lisa asked. The test was about humility, about recognizing that you do not need to control everything to be worthy of knowledge. Your species has shown something we have waited 1,000 years to see, the wisdom to bear witness without the need to dominate. The voice paused, and Jake could feel something like approval in the silence. You approached our maze as a game to be enjoyed, not a puzzle to be solved. You faced your failures with honesty and community, not shame and isolation. You witnessed creation without the need to control it. These are the qualities we hope to find. What happens now? Jake asked. Now you return to your people as the first species to pass the Crucible Protocol. You will have access to our knowledge, our technology, our understanding. But more importantly, you will serve as teachers for other species who wish to try the test again. As they prepared to leave, Carol looked back at the twin stars dancing in their eternal orbit. I'm going to write a report about this, she said, but I don't think anyone will believe it. They'll believe it, Jake said, because we're going to show them something better than advanced technology or powerful weapons. We're going to show them what humans do best. Which is? Amy asked. Jake smiled. We laugh in the face of the impossible. We support each other through the worst times, and we know when to step back and let the universe do what it does best. As they walked back toward their ship, Dan chuckled. So we passed the greatest test in galactic history by being ourselves. Who would have thought? Anyone who really knows humans, Jake said. We've always been good at the impossible.